Yeah, let's dig into it. I have a lot of slides, so I'm just going to start with me and the things I really care about outside of work. Of course, my Mrs. Sanne. We've been together for about 6 years now. She's somewhere in the room, I believe, there in the corner. And my dog, the one that when I'm seriously when I'm not working, that's the thing I care about most: is spending time with the dog, doing long walks, relaxing. There is no more time otherwise. Anyhow, I'm quite busy with work as well. I'm also one of the recruitment Slackers administrators. There's another one there. It's a big Dutch group of sources and recruiters, quite active folks, I have to say, quite proud of them. I'm involved in that as well. So let's talk about brand versus no brand, because I think that a lot of people in the room are thinking, okay, here's this guy, Yves. Of course he can hire senior architects because he's part of a big brand like Facebook. But it hasn't always been the case, and I'll explain to you later on why it still doesn't matter. If you work at Facebook and hiring at this level, brand gets you so far, but there's tons of people that will reject you and quite sometimes are highly critical of anything that you actually do. So it's even harder to get them in. Been part of ASML, that is a big brand. They built lithography systems, so the things that the chips that are in here, they're built by a Dutch company. They cost 100 million a piece, and they needed system architects. So that's like a combination of mechatronics, mechanics, physics, mathematics, computer science, all rolled into one. I did their system engineering hiring. Then it's interesting what happened to the slides. There you go. Then I joined a startup from friends of mine, e-commerce startup, and built basically their people for out of nowhere. So they had a group of 50 people, all hired through referrals, and it was quite, it went as it went, but they really needed to make another leap in order to, in this case, sell the company. So I joined, like I said, around 50, grew the team to about 120, 130, sold the startup to an Excel-based backer, Excel in this case as a backer, and Lightspeed as a company. Stayed on, did people in EMEA, so recruitment and HR. Then left because I basically wanted to do just technology hiring again. Founded Maven, my own company. And then as I was super happy in Amsterdam, minding my own business, I got an email from Facebook. Now that is not necessarily special because Facebook's strategy is sending as much emails to as many people to figure out who's whom and speak to everybody. And I was quite skeptical coming in. Everybody has these ideas around what Facebook is and what they're doing and why it could or could not be interesting. But as I was interviewing, I realized that they said, Yves, we think that you enjoy doing lots of research and taking a step back from the enormous, tumultuous situation that sometimes is recruitment, doing as many reach outs as possible, getting as many people to speak to. It doesn't really work for the stuff that I was trying to do at Facebook. So they said at one point, Yves, we have never tried to hire our, and I'm not going to say levels because there's so many recruiters in this room, I challenge you to find out what level that is. I can use some of the other competitors. So if you think in the market, senior staff engineers at Google, level 67, 68, Microsoft, that's basically where my world started. I don't know what's happening to the slides, sorry for the little bleep there. So there's not a lot of these people out there, and I'll drill down how that really looks like. We have a few minutes only. It took me a few months to get ramped on this, but I'll try and give you some learnings there. Currently, as I said, I'm building leadership at Uber. So what are we going to talk about? What is engineering leadership? Just briefly to give you some context, how to identify it, how to engage with them properly. A very important one there, domain knowledge, something that I think is absolutely missing in parts of the recruitment industry right now. We're very focused on the search piece. That is why we're here. We like to use new tools, new ways of working, and how to identify the profile. But I worked on chief architects in the machine learning space at Facebook, and I know that this is a part of the industry that is developing very rapidly. So as algorithms develop, what they do is they learn. The data ingestion makes them learn. So tomorrow, they're a better version of themselves. We're, as an industry, very focused on finding the right people. I think in a few years' time, you'll see quite a big amount of automation in this space. And the real differentiator for us as sourcers, how to especially hire talent where sometimes there's only 5 or 10 in the world, comes down to how you engage with them and the kind of research you can actually do. Basically, these people don't really, there's something going on. These people really don't, shall we say, take shit. immediately know once you are talking about something that you do not know. So the big challenge there is to actually find out what makes them tick, and also how complex something is that they're actually building. We can do this on a smaller screen as well. Shall I just keep going? Yeah, right. All right, so first, we covered a little bit about searching in regards to engaging. Domain knowledge will be covered in algorithms. In this case, I will take a slight mention of this later. I've built an ML model at my time at Facebook. I manually trained a model of, started out with 500 profiles, basically saying yes or no, and then tried to find out whether a linear regression model in machine learning could give me better search results than me doing it myself. I'll talk about that later on what basically happened there. The slides look a little bit less fancy now, sorry for that, but still hope that you can all read it. So let's talk about the dev community. How big is it? There's various numbers on that. You can now not see it anymore because of the resolution, but 18.5, 21 million people in the world. That's all great, but how many programming languages were made in the world? This is rough numbers. The 30 is the one that's interesting. That's basically the languages that are widely used from most of your companies that you're part of that are running a distributed environment need some high-level languages as well. So you could think about anything ranging from C++, Python, Scala, Go, those kinds of things. That is sort of the realm that I'm in. So if you think about who is good enough to be a chief architect at Facebook, lots of people want to be one. The challenge is, can I ask the right questions as a sourcer, and can I do the right research to understand you are great, but you're meeting the bar, which is amazing. We'd love to hire you, but you're definitely not that chief architect. When I started at Facebook, there were less than 10 in EMEA, and that group's a little bit bigger in the US, but currently only there's a small team of US sources that is working with the VP engineering, 2 of them, and the CTO of Facebook to hire these people. So there's not a lot of them, and a lot of people that want to be one, so you really need to be very mindful of how you screen people. So sourcing is one part, but finding who's whom is really the most interesting part there. Bit of a split between average recruitment industry practice right now. I think that most of you folks are used to doing X amount of reach outs every week, talking a lot about your brand. I am this. This is what we're building. We use these languages, yada, yada, yada. That's all great, but then again, isn't that really much of the same? Aren't we all building software in some way, shape, or form? Aren't we all using a programming language? Aren't we all building a compiler or using one? So it's around trying to make sure that people like that are not susceptible to much of the kind of information that we're trying to throw at them. And they're very critical on it. So engineering leadership, for your mind, maybe I'll explain it in the next slide. What does it really mean? These is the group of people that are, well, you could say managers, but they are very good at system design. These lead the delivery of a large product. For instance, I was working across all of the stack at Facebook, so all of the projects, excluding WhatsApp, by the way, but all of the other projects I was touching on and all the domains. So from the real-time bidding engines, basically a large, very large algorithmic infrastructure that decides what ad goes to what user, so that anyone, when you log into Facebook or Instagram, you can see something. And that's, of course, not us as humans figuring out what you need to see. That's based on your preference and where you click and where you stop and yada, yada. Those kinds of people are on the right side of things. They build the actual infrastructure. So they are capable, chief architects, of leading a very large technical product and the launching of this in a very big distributed setting. So for all of you people that work in a startup and haven't really figured out distribution yet, startups usually start with a very good idea and a monolithic application. Data stems from one place. It can break, but everything will break. Facebook is very big in its infrastructure. Uber is the same. So what happens is things get distributed. There's lots of dependencies that are used to make sure that it never breaks, because there's about 2 billion plus users on a platform like Facebook, so it cannot break. There's lots of money to be made or lost as well at companies like Uber or Facebook. If you can't use your Uber, that sucks for you, but there's about 100 million rides every week that Uber does. So kind of important that those systems don't break. There's a few people that can oversee all of this, and I can talk to all of the architects within a company to make sure this works. That's chief architects, the people who lead those teams from a managerial standpoint, making sure that nobody ever gets bored. I heard Peter saying some interesting things there around that as well. Those are the engineering leaders. One can be the other, but mostly you see that at one point people do get pushed into leadership, especially in the EMEA region, where we sort of, it's a shame almost. In America, people kind of respect the architect working as an individual contributor. Here we're trying to push people into management all the time. That's a struggle because hiring chief architects is really tough if you are working in an industry where people try to push a good engineer into being a leader all the time, losing their technical ability. And I want to keep most of that technical ability. Just some fun. This guy, I'm not sure if you know who he is. Some people might. It's John Skeet, by the way. This is somebody that would not probably reach the level that I'm talking about. He is definitely the #1 in the world if you look at open source environments like Stack Overflow and answering questions. But the thing is, what is his impact if you think about his work? Has he built the core of the language? Are millions of developers benefiting daily from his work on a language or on a compiler, on etc.? Not really. So he's answering lots of questions about it. That's great, but he wouldn't be the level that I'm actually looking at. It's above it. So it comes down to lots of screening efforts, and we'll get to that in a bit. Of course, that's what they asked me to do here. I was the first one to do it in EMEA, so I had nothing to go by. There was a small team in the US that said, yes, we're working on this together with our VPs of engineering and our CTO, but you got to find it out yourself. And the hard part of this is finding out the hiring bar, because hiring a lead engineer at Facebook is one thing, and you're quite a good engineer when you're actually there. But getting up to the point where you realize they can change the entire industry of software with their work, because Facebook is at a size, for instance, or Uber, but especially Facebook, where they open source a lot of their work. So these people are not just hired to make Facebook benefit. That's one part. But the other part is, what can the industry benefit from their work? So we'll chat in a little bit about how you can spot those people. First, I wanted to start with how a process might look like. That's me in the top, where it's top of funnel. I fill the pipe. Usually you start a lot with cell calls, because again, you think everybody wants to be a chief architect at Facebook. Well, a lot that want to be, unfortunately, might not be at that level. And the people that can be are not very willing, when they hear about Facebook, to necessarily join you, because they are sometimes the gods of their industry. They are famous. Other people write Wikipedia pages about them. It's that kind of a level of engineer. So you need to flip it early on, and we're all used to selling a job, but this comprises lots of work of your business. So I would work with architects at Facebook and engineering directors to make sure that we give context to the domain that they would actually be working on before we start to be very serious. So it could very well be that you're 2 cell calls in, I've spoken to them, 3 weeks pass, and still you're trying to frame a domain for an engineer at this level so that they can also decide, this is where I feel most comfortable, this is where I would potentially like to engage myself in. So it's very slow compared to some of the more transactional work that you see in senior IC hiring. Then at one point you want to get a little bit serious. The industry calls that exploratories. That's a conversation which you lead with your business. So a sourcer would definitely figure out whom is the best manager or architect that I can set up in this chat, and it's very much a two-way street. So can I get hiring signal on a candidate, on their architecture, on the impact of their work, on their values as an engineer, focusing on impact. Humbleness got mentioned in the last session as well. Those things are very important, and especially because those technical leaders work with a very vast amount of engineers in a company. So you would definitely want them to be leading from the front, but in the right way. So that's where you use an exploratory for. Usually in those kinds of companies, they'll sign off after it and they'll go, fine, we are fine to interview. If the candidate is okay, we'll start. In some cases, depending again on the company, I've used Facebook as an example, but a technical screen might also be used sometimes if there's any doubt after the exploratory. But usually the exploratory gives enough signal and people will go to a recruiter and do the loop. We call that a loop, a set of interviews. Those are the final interviews. System design, coding, coding retrospect meetings, so taking away the code and, for instance, uploading a piece of open source software that they have guided and letting them speak to the decisions that she, and the big engineering team around him have made in order to get to this piece of open source software. So it's fine for engineers to talk about code when the code is there and they can actually fiddle with it, but what if you have to just talk about it? That's an arbiter interview. That is also part of what an interview like this could look like. And then the last session covered it as well for those that were here. For those that weren't, CR is candidate review. It's a session where we, and of course you try to eliminate bias throughout the entire process of interviewing. So there's many rules and regulations around how to deliver feedback and how to eliminate your own bias in interviewing a person. But that especially comes back when you get all of the transcripts. At this level, those are about 50 to 70 pages of transcript. And you talk about it with the hiring committee. Again, no part of the actual interview loop. Those are separate people throughout the world of Facebook that will just interpret it, all of the interview feedback, and will give a suggestion, either hire, no hire, or follow-up interview. Lots of people you still lose there, trust me. This was me, just as an example. I was talking about trying to not create a humongous load of work for yourself, but doing lots of research. So if you see, there's 256 people in half a year that I was working with. Does that mean that this does not apply to you as you're working on a different rec day to day or multiple recs? It can, because I used to work in software engineering for a few months into Facebook. I just wanted to do something else, and they allow you. And I still use the same rhetoric. So I never reach out to more than 30 candidates in a week. Never. I think the last time that I did that was a very long time ago. I focus more on doing research up front and doing very serious reach outs, which basically makes them say, all right, this is ridiculous, I've never seen this, like we need to chat. If you can rely on that, you can do it in both a brand and a non-brand company. Trust me, just find the right preconditions that are in your software currently. That have nothing to do with your table tennis tables and how you work Scrum or Agile. That's fine, but like in the end, no one cares. It's about certain technical complexity and challenges within its architecture that will get those people to interview. So 3% also got an offer, and you know, that's looking at it. This was quite a strong half. There's also senior vice presidents of engineering in this list, in the sense that who got hired. So it takes some time, but definitely trust on your process. Don't try and go for the bulk of work and spamming the industry with, in my mind, useless messaging that will not make these people move jobs. So we're going to talk about a couple of things on how to identify them. Being mindful of time here, 50 minutes left. Of course, open source, yeah, great. GitHub, definitely use it. I'll talk you through a little bit what we see here, because of the resolution got distorted quite a bit. I've highlighted the Go language, just to figure out Uber, for instance, 70% Golang. Let's say I want to hire somebody from there. Go and figure out who's good at it first. Just don't try and think that you know what company is good at it. Just go open source and figure out who actually is good, who is doing lots of things, who gets all those beautiful stars right there from the industry on the right. And then see who's actually working there, who's contributing. Those might be people from Google, those might be people that are not working at Google. Figure out who's working there. Who's number 1 and 2? Those are those folks. This is not the architect. The architect is whoever is their technical leader. So this is the number 1 contributor into Go in the world. That's great, but it's not the one we need. We need the architect above. That's why it's really hard to sometimes feel who these people are, because they don't share the core of a big open source repository. It's not like you can go to Linus Torvalds and just get everything on every repository that he might be working on. In his case, maybe a bad example, but big open source contributors at this level sometimes are not allowed to share the core of certain code. Yet, however, you need to know who they are in order to hire them. So it's just sort of a almost sourcing with a blindfold on, but going by the metrics that you still have. Who's the number 1 contributor? Start there. We all know Wikipedia, use it. It tells you a lot, honestly. For instance, this guy, I'm quite proud of who he is. I think most of the people in the room will know who this is. He is the founder of the Python language. He is Dutch, he's from Amsterdam. At least he lived there for a long time. That will give you a simple suggestion on who that guy is. Again, this doesn't really show because of the resolution here, but this, what you see right here, is a session that will be covered later today around how to build HTML lookups for speed. So if I find his name here and I select Guido Verrossen on the top, and I click down to my own HTML piece there, I can just look him up quickly on GitHub or any other platform. Really join that session, because it will make your life so much faster in your day-to-day work. It's very repetitive, the work that we do. So anything that you can speed up here is always useful to have in play. Funny part, this is the core Python repository, and apparently Guido van Rossum forked it, so he is not the owner of the repository for which he built the language. So it's kind of weird, but apparently that happened. So just wanted to say. Let's say you don't know what kind of architecture a certain company is covering, but you do want to know who actually, what choices have been made from a technology perspective. You can go into StackShare and just type in the company that you are looking for. Most of these companies are present on StackShare. If they are not, it could be interesting. No, not everybody's there, but anybody from a scale-up that wants to talk about open sourcing some of their work, whether that be their technical stack, whether that be a repository that is important to share with the community, they'll be shared there. So if you don't know who the person is that is building certain architecture, you want to start with what are they using, and it could give some good guidelines when you start the source. Again, the down-to-earth piece, I'm talking about people where there aren't a lot of them. I worked at a company like Facebook, so I can imagine that you all say, yeah, whatever. But I'm working at Startup X, and I love my company, and I still want to hire better than the average. What do? You can also go to something like React. Probably you know that, front-end framework, used for single-page web applications. This is a Redux containerization usage, basically, for running an app in different environments. It's what many of your front-end engineers will probably know. I mean, it would be weird if they didn't. But you can look at who's contributing again. You see that up in the right over there. You see that there's lots of stars. There's things happening here. It must be of importance. There's also people working on it. Who's working on it and who's the best? Maybe you cannot hire number 1, but you can hire number 40, number 50, number 60. Those will guarantee probably be better than the average engineer that is working in your company. So use whatever is there. It's free to engage with. You can just play around with, I'm using GitHub as a clear example. It can be many others, but GitHub is very easy for everybody to get used to. Again, this is the guy, he says, working at React, co-author of the Redux and React app. You might say I cannot hire him, but look at who is following him. That's a very large base of front-end engineers that you could potentially hire. Very interesting as well, who is he following and why? In my world, I'd be interested in who he is following, because it might very well be that there's a big architect that he's a fan of, that he won't tell me when we're getting coffee together, but there might be some very senior engineers there that we would like to hire. You can do the same, again, down to earth, go to any language, go pick in a city. This is Git Awards. I would definitely look that up and just see who are the best open source repositories. Who gets the most praise in Amsterdam for building something in Golang? Go to, start at number 1. I mean, number 3 is Werker, which is a very good Dutch company as well. If you can't hire number 1 to 10, start at 20. But there's great engineers there that are actually getting praise from the open source community. And yeah, again, very simple. As well, where do you hire people from if you don't know where to go to? There's big conferences. I've just given a very boring example from TechBeacon, but literally the amount of these websites that are talking about the biggest JavaScript conferences or whatever is just ridiculous. There was a website that got killed, techconferences.io. It was great. You can even look up specifically per language who was the headline speaker. But just try and find your way around who's keynote speakers at these big conferences. Those are very senior leaders. So for instance, Amazon is very kind in showing me that on their own website. This basically says chief architect in AWS. That's their cloud, their serverless environment. I want to hire those. Then, we have a few minutes left. I'm going to run very fast through this. Patent sourcing. That's a great way of getting insights into patents, so technology that a company really wanted to be part of their brand. So they actually submitted the patent saying, we want to make money of this open source. We want to own the technology. You can source it. And it's actually not that hard to do it. I wish I had a different, a better resolution for this in order to show this. But there is a code system that is attached to this. And the EP file stands for European patents. So it's filed somewhere in Europe. So these people might not be in the US, might still be here. Very good start for this. There's even whole patent searching overview sites for this, where you can just see in which country you are sourcing for, what kind of patent do you want to look at. Why is that important? I'll get to that in a bit. Google does the same. You probably know this. Google Patent Search has some great open source guides for this. You can just, if you don't know what you're doing, you want to start doing this, it's really easy to get a head start with it. In this case, again, I'll talk you through it. I'm talking about either a cloud, a serverless, or a storage environment that I want to look up. I want to talk about a range. When was it published? In my case, for when hiring chief architects, you'd probably go back to the 1990s, 1980s. Those are people with very senior experience, and back then they were submitting their first open source work or patent work on distributed systems, for instance. So you have lots of knowledge there. You can even look at the country of filing or the language. So let's say you're sourcing for something very specific in research, and still you need a senior engineer. You can just go 2005 to 2018, go to Estonia if you need it. Wink, wink. And find yourself a great engineer right there that's doing something that is so good that it got filed for a patent. Then what I like to do is sometimes look at my favorite companies. In this case, again, you can't read it, but what I've added here is the same query. It talks about distributed systems or high-load systems. I'm not sure if you can read that upstairs. And then I'm talking about the company. In this case, it's Sun Microsystems. The reason why I do that now, it's now part of Oracle, but back in the day, getting hired into Sun in the 90s was an actual really big achievement. Those people are genius. So what patents have they been filing back in the day? That's very relevant. Those people are still great at what they do. Some people move back into research, yes, but these are the kind of people that you would like to aim for if you're going for big architects or something very dry like distributed systems. You can also do it in Google. Yeah, this is really tough to read, but I'll talk you through it again. Data miner, there's a few people here that are listening that are very good at that. There's one. Are you going to talk about it? You did already? Oh, shit, I missed that. If you haven't looked that back up, Guillaume is very good at scraping content as well. I used to do this a lot as well and still do. If I want to mine a lot of search results and just go through and categorize them, you can clean up the data. You can do this in free tools. I just use Google Drive nowadays. But you can just look at the description in which, in this case, I've used LinkedIn, right? It could be anything else. LinkedIn is very easy because it talks about a description. This is how it comes out. So it just talks about everything in here. You can search it. So that's how I make sense of who has ever been a chief architect at Amazon and why, or a distinguished engineer at Microsoft and why. That's the sort of base that I use in getting myself up to speed on what kind of domain technologies are in a certain company. And then I'll start sourcing for individuals. So search it, scrape it, mine it. I would really like to say if you're going to spend time on really doubling down on a certain pipeline that you just want to own, that you're really responsible for, try and isolate a large search query, like a large string. Do every country in Europe if you're looking for European engineers. And just try to make sense of what the bulk is saying, and then learn from that and go from there, and then do a deliberate search, and then reach out to candidates. No, don't spam the whole industry at once. Like I said, I've built a model at Facebook on this to figure out, is the model better than me when I manually source? The basic outcome was, it didn't make a difference, and that's not because I'm a good sourcer, not at all. It has to do with the fact that once you source very specifically and you run an ML model, the results won't be very much better. It's better to do something very generic, like an engineer, nothing really specific, or somebody in sales, or accounting, or finance, or whatever, where there's tons of them, and you'll teach the model manually, this is good, this is not good, this is good, this is not good. If you find there's tools for this on running an ML model if you want, probably talk to some of your engineers if you work in an engineering company, but that will take much of the working hours away from you. That is just manual work of identifying profiles. The model can do it for you, but if you're looking for something super specific, forget it. Then it's probably better to just write your own query and do like you normally do. Last thing, don't ever forget, these people went to school at one point. I heard another comment from our previous speaker that it doesn't really necessarily matter. You can also have genius jerks, let's say, people that went to great schools but don't necessarily are very humble still. That's where, again, your screening ability comes from. So part of this is finding and allocating who's very good, but the second part of this is definitely finding out who can actually do the job in a way that's very respectful to their environment. So Schools definitely work. I map them out every week, every year, once there's lists coming out of who's top schools. And I go back, way back in the day, who basically attended one of my favorite unis. Irina Shmeva, actually, I believe, went to this university. MSU. Andre will probably in the corner take a little smile because don't we love that university? Look at who's been there in the 70s to the 90s. Who's done something in this case, my query was PhD, distributed systems, computer science, and infrastructure. You can mix that up, of course, but there's people that will come out of that are doing amazing things. They might be in their own company, they might be running a startup, a non-brand that you wouldn't know about, but they are capable of being an architect at this level. So it's all there. You just need to make sure that you actually understand what you're doing. I have only a few minutes left, so I'm going to talk about this very briefly. This is what we should be doing more. Learning what you're hiring for. It's not, everybody can understand how to source a profile. That's great, but you're going to need to speak to these people, and these people are critical. So if you don't know how a distributed system works, or if you don't know how a compiler is built, or if you don't know what the technology is that they're so good at, how are you going to sell them? They are respected in the community. They are famous people. Why would they ever leave to join your company? So it's very important to take note of some of the open source, like YouTube has countless videos on this, and it can just teach you in a very childish, fun manner what it's all about. I think if you're working in software, you should definitely get involved into knowing what you're hiring for, not just like, oh, I got this job and I'm just going to spam 100 people and I will definitely get 10 engineers that are doing something in C++. What does that mean? Why? What are they building? So that's what I chatted about. I think sources should change a little bit from, I found this great engineer, I chatted to this, and I think that the engineer is perfect. I've identified the market. Yeah, that's all great, but, like, what did you get in process and hired? And I think there's a huge drop-off there of sources in the future that will know what they're hiring for, that can get a super seasoned engineer and sell them something that makes sense, that makes them go, all right, I make more than $1 million at Google every year. I am famous, but I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. I'm going to relocate to the other end of the world because your talk actually made sense. We should do more about that. And I'm happy to help if you want to know more about it. So there's a great saying that my buddy's grandfather, I don't know when he lived, so what he used to say, it's Dutch, als je doet wat je deed, krijg je wat je kreeg. If you do what you did, you will get what you got. If you don't change your way of looking at sourcing, if you don't try new things, if you don't want to learn what these people are really building, you could just as well be an algorithm or be optimized in full. So where's the added value from you as a technical sourcer? It's very much in the domain space, so try and get into that as well. That's what I said. So what do these people only see from you? And I know time's almost up. I only need like a minute. They see nothing but your email. So just imagine, if you're going to send, if this entire room is going to send emails that are just about them and their table tennis tables in their startup and the fact that they use JavaScript and blah, 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 blah about us, but nothing about this person, he's going to at one point go, I'm not going to look at my email anymore because probably there's just a lot of crap in there. Try and think about the next recruiter that's trying to hire an engineer. Yeah? Try and not to pollute the industry with the messaging that you're giving. It's not about the bulk. It's about, did I actually send a message that I feel so confident about that when I, in the end, remind them twice, I actually say, I sent you a great message. Why am I getting no reply? I can easily say that because I did the work. I would love for the industry to get involved in that. So it's not necessarily just about the finding piece. We can all do that. It's about how do we engage with them? How do we get them in the door? Yeah, we can go through this. I want to use this slide. It's just like dating, folks, really. Don't talk about yourself all the time. I'm not sure if Sana liked that when we met the first time. I hope that I didn't do that. Just looking in, no? But what have we learned? So a little bit on how to find people that are influencing billions of users. This is a great start. Do your research. When you do research, reach out in a proper way. Don't spam the world. I very much dislike it, and these engineers do too. It's just like dating. It's not about me. It's about you. That's basically it.
Thank you.